So welcome to day 2 in Evolution Revolution, a deeper kind of conversation. And I trust that you have all enjoyed and benefited tremendously from day 1, from the first part of this incredible program. And what I would love you to do is tell me in the chat, are you excited about today? Are you looking forward to learning more? And what has been your biggest takeaway so far? I'm just going to put this so I can see the chat here. So what has been your biggest takeaway so far from day 1? Let me know what has been
my
your biggest
my voice thing is up.
I have to mute you. So, okay, what has been your biggest takeaway so far from day 1? And what are you most looking forward to learning, to gaining, to getting from day 2? Put it in the comments and let me know. Yeah, watching everybody's body language today. Yeah, you're honed in and aware of that and alert of that, right? And did you see more? Did you notice more than what you might not have noticed before? Were you more aware of people's, gestures, their, how they tilted their heads, whether their eyes were open or they're very closed, where they were leaning back, or what they were doing with their hands, where they might have had a problem? Were you more aware of that kind of stuff? Were you more aware of where they been in integrity in what they were saying? What kind of stood out? What stood out most from you from yesterday? And that is presuming that you all have watched the replay or were here with me live. So put in the chat and let me know. What I would also love to know is, what are you most excited to learn? What is the one key thing that would really up your communication, do you feel? What is the one thing that would really improve it? Is it learning how to listen? Is it learning how to read body language? Is it knowing if it's the right time for you to talk? Remember, we went through all the different issues, the different problems yesterday of what you might have encountered. Is it, kind of saying the wrong thing because you're so eager to fix somebody, to help them, to sort them out, that, yeah, that's a common one, that maybe, it's hard to restrain and you say the wrong thing because you haven't asked the right questions to find out what they want. And that's a really important point, is to really ask those questions and find out what they want. And in NLP, we talk a lot about presuppositions and presupposing stuff. Sometimes that's a wonderful thing. But when it comes to this context, we do not want to presuppose. We never want to presume that we know what is best for somebody else. We might get close, but that close might be still too far away. I'll give you an example of that. When I first started coaching, and I'm a natural kind of motherly kind of instinct to want to, protect, fix, help, sort everybody out. So it's very normal instinct to kind of say, I know what you need. Here's what I can do. Here's what's going to help you. And it's a very natural behavior. However, on a subconscious level, that is going to hugely break a rapport on a subconscious level. Because when I first started coaching and learning all of this, it took learning it the hard way to figure out where I was going wrong. So sometimes I would be too eager to sort it, and somebody would come to me and they'd say something like, oh, yeah, Danielle, I'm here because I'm feeling demotivated, I'm depressed, I'm down, I've no motivation, I've no va-va-voom. And they'd say something, and because I was the fixer, I'd be so eager to jump to the conclusion of what they needed. And I might say something like, okay, I know what you need to make you happy. And then they go, well, I am happy. And I'd say, oh, I thought you said you were like, you had no va-va-voom. And they say, well, yeah, I did. But like, I meant I've no energy. but I'm perfectly happy. And I go, oh, right. So I would have broken rapport. Or somebody might come to me and say, I'm really depressed. And I'd say, okay, I know what I can do to make you happy or to feel, excited about life. And they'd say, oh, no, I don't really need that. I don't know if I want to feel excited about life. I just want to feel, you know, at home in myself. And I'd go, oh, and I'd have broken rapport. Does that make sense? So we tend to jump to conclusions of what we believe is what somebody needs. But the difference in those words is huge, huge. And on a conscious level, it may not seem like anything. On a conscious level, we'll just keep talking. And the conscious mind the other person has not recognized what's actually taken place. But the break in communication is really, really big. So the next time that you're eager to fix somebody, sort something, give them something, fix whatever it is that their problem might be, and you think you have the solution, hold tight for a moment and wait to see what words, what language they use, because it's a world apart on the subconscious level. It's a world apart. Does that make sense? So let them, by asking everything that we said yesterday, by listening, by being silent, by asking the right type of questions, find the right destination before you jump to any conclusions. Tell me, does that make sense? Put that in the comments. Now, let's get going on today's wonderful presentation. So I'm going to actually share my screen, if I can figure out again how to do this. So share screen, portion of screen, share. Okay, so yesterday, I'm going to go right back to the beginning. We spoke a lot about body language, right? We spoke a lot about, I'm just going to put the chat over here so I can see you guys. Perfect. Knowing how to close a business conversation effectively. That's what you want to get out of it. Yeah, fabulous, 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 fabulous. Okay. So yeah, keep the comments coming in. So we spoke yesterday about the 3 different parts of communication. We have that make up our communication. And we spoke about the biggest part, which is our body language. And that is huge. It is huge and it's underestimated. It's very underestimated and it's very neglected, both in the sense of how we observe others and what we can learn about them in all contexts, about, what they're not telling us, what they're showing us, what they don't even know themselves. We can see so much in their body language, but also how we can use our body language to influence. Right? So it is powerful. It is the biggest part of our communication. And there is a huge difference between just using your words and using your words with congruency with your body language. When you match the two, and when the two match, and we spoke about that a lot yesterday, now when we feel that congruency, and here's a big subject that I could do a whole year mentorship on, is the subject of helping somebody feel safe. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today when we go on to the next section. Helping somebody feel safe. By this, I do not mean necessarily, oh, I'm a black belt, so I can protect you. I'm not talking about in that sense. I'm talking about in a deep-rooted primal instinct. I feel safe, comfortable, at home, relaxed, like taken care of by this person. When we can create that ambience, so to speak, it is powerful. And one of the most powerful ways that we will do that naturally is through the congruency of our words and our tone and our body language. If there is incongruency, like I'm saying one thing and I'm doing another, then the other person is not going to feel safe, in inverted commas. They're going to feel uncomfortable. They're not going to be able to put their finger on it, but there's going to be resistance. Have you ever had the experience where you just don't gel with somebody and you say, there's just something about that person that I just don't gel with? And we're often, by the way, jumping to conclusions unfairly, that we think, oh, I just don't like this person. But you might not like this person simply because there's an incongruency going on in their body and it makes you feel uncomfortable. And it might be nothing about you or about them. It might be something that's going on in their internal world that is making them, you can't put your finger on it. You cannot consciously understand it, but it's making them do something that's out of alignment and it feels funny. And so we jump to conclusions. We think, oh, there's something dodgy about that person. Does that make sense? So when we can learn consciously how to use our body to match our words in the most obvious way, we can help somebody feel really, really at home around us. And that is obviously beneficial in so many ways for building relationships, for building rapport, for building it in all cases, whether it's business or personal. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we spoke a lot about the different type of body language and how to see this and what we've been missing, what we didn't know, and now we know, right? About, all the cues, all the little subtle signs that we can look out for now, where they put their eyes, how they tilt their head, if they're pursing their lips, if they're squinting, if they're leaning back, if they're leaning forward, if they're gesticulating this way or that way, if they're turning their toes away. All of these things are wonderful, wonderful skills to hone. Now, obviously, my students, my mentorees, my NLP students are going to be, going a lot deeper into this, and you can do the same. What I would suggest you do to start with is pick one of these things, is say to yourself, you know what, for the next week, I'm just going to focus on watching people and observing and honing my skill of watching how people gesticulate. What could that mean? What could it mean when they put their hands out here or up here or down here or around here? All the different things that we spoke about yesterday. Let me hone that skill. And at the beginning, it feels a bit weird. It can feel difficult. It can feel strange to be kind of watching somebody and not listening to their words and focusing on what they're doing. Remember, it's 55% of their communication. It's a superpower. You will see everything that is going on within them. It's a superpower. Believe me, I know stuff that people don't know about themselves all the time, constantly. I've already got calls this morning from some of you guys yesterday. In 5 minutes, I can tell you literally where your block is. Now, isn't that powerful? Isn't that powerful? So if you haven't got on a call with me yet, go book that Calendly call. Go book that Calendly call with me. I'll put it even in the chat again for you there. So if you haven't booked it, go book it. So we spoke all about body language. So, and what's happening on the inside and what that is, how we can see that from the outside. When somebody is, for example, moving their hands or looking in a particular direction, we know what they're doing inside. We know that they're looking at a big picture. We know that they're blowing something out of proportion. We know that they're looking at something out of reach or very close to them. That is powerful information. And we can know where the sweet spot is. Do you remember that? We call that a spatial anchor. We know where the sweet spot is. So you can put your product, your service into that sweet spot. Or you, if you're the one that wants to attract the partner or whatever it is, you can put yourself into that spot. And that is powerful. That is hugely, hugely powerful. So today we're going to go deeper, 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 because we are now going to go into the next biggest part of communication, which is, of course, yeah, you haven't guessed already, which is, of course, tone, which is, of course, tone, sound, how we speak, the tone of our voice, the pitch, the rhythm, the volume, all of the things that make up the auditory stuff that comes with communication. And again, this is hugely, maybe even the most neglected, depending on what your personal favorite style of communication is. And by that, I mean another big subject that we study in hypnosis and NLP is whether a person is more visual, whether they are more kinesthetic, as in they talk through feelings, or whether they are more auditory. Generally speaking, someone who is very auditory will have a lovely voice, will have a nice voice. One of the reasons I fell in love with my partner was his voice. I remember even before he was my karate instructor, and I know that's very cliche, but I remember even my first phone call with him thinking, God, he's a lovely voice. He's a lovely voice. And it took me years before I realized how auditory he was. And it took many fights, believe me, before I really understood how auditory he was. Because I like to look somebody in the eye, and every time that we'd have a conversation, I'd be saying the same thing. I'd be saying, why aren't you listening to me? And he'd say, I am listening to you, Danielle. I say, you're not. And he'd say, I am. I say, but you're not. You're not even looking at me. And it took me years before I learned this stuff. And one day when I learned this, it clicked and I went, oh, wow. He doesn't need to look at me to hear me. He doesn't hear through his eyes. And guess what? He's tilting his ear towards me. A big clue. So the next time that you see somebody looking away, again, don't jump to conclusions that they're rude or disinterested. They might be paying really good attention. And I have a little bit of a running joke with my partner now about this, because he knows this now as well. I've shared this with him, and it makes sense. And he's always, kind of jokes with me and says, I don't have to look at you. And we have this little bit of a joke because I say, it's sensory overload. If somebody is very auditory and that's their favorite style of communication, and for him to take in my very important information that I'm sharing with him, and he doesn't want to look at me, I kind of joke and I say it's because I'm just so gorgeous. It's just too much for him to handle. Okay. But really what it is it's sensory overload. It is literally that. It's too much for him to handle because he's so focused on the sound that looking is a distraction. So if you even notice yourself that sometimes when you're really focusing on something, you tend to look down, you tend to look away, you're tilting your head, you're half closing your eyes. They could be signs that you are a natural auditory communicator. Does that make sense? And that's great information to know. And it's really powerful to know what your partner might be and what your friends are and what your client is. Because when you speak back in that language, now we've got a real connection. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're going to speak about a few different areas to do with the tone. And the tone is about 38%, they say, of our communication style. So we know that 55% that we did yesterday was our body language, right? Now we're going to talk more about tone. So we kind of have probably about 45 minutes left here today. And I've got about 3 different areas of this that I want to cover. And I'm going to spend roughly around, 10, 15 minutes on each of these sections so that we can go through them. And then we're going to have time at the end for some questions and answers. Okay, and maybe we'll finish up with a little wrap up and a little summary and a little synopsis or, recap of what we've done so far. Does that sound good? Tomorrow we're going to touch on words today because I want to share with you the 2 most important words that you're ever going to use. And then tomorrow we're going to go much more deeper into conversation, into words, into sentences that you can use to influence, whether through spoken form, whether through written form. So does that sound useful to you? So what I just did just there now, what I literally just did there now, by explaining what we are going to do, is very simply what the subconscious mind loves, because it is a way to keep you feeling safe, isn't it? I've kind of preempted and told you what's going to happen. So it kind of puts you at ease because it kind of go, okay, now I know what the setup is. And that is a very powerful priming method to use to help people feel safe. Now, what has that got to do with tone? Everything. Because it's kind of a rhythm. It's related to a rhythm. Rhythm is primal, isn't it? That beat, that rhythm. And it starts very, very early on in life. It starts with our mother's heartbeat, doesn't it? Yeah. So we like a rhythm. We like a kind of that particular rhythm that keeps us feeling safe. And preempting or priming somebody with the situation is a way to kind of keep them in that rhythm. And it's a little bit like singing. I don't know if anyone here is good at singing. I'm not. I like to believe I am, but I'm really not. But in singing or music, there's often verses and then we have a chorus, right? So a great way to bring people through a rhythm when you're speaking or presenting is to go through kind of a verse. If we imagine a song, you imagine that there is a verse, and that's similar to kind of like the first story of a speech, for example. Then we've got a chorus, don't we, after every verse in a song? We've got a chorus. And this is a little bit like the kind of the foundational, the message of your first story, your first verse. And then we've got another verse, which brings us back to maybe a second story. Another thing that I've studied a lot is writing. Some of you know this, and script writing. And again, it'll have these kind of rhythms. And then we have a chorus again. And that's again back to the foundations. So in a song or in a story, there will be these kind of like story sections where we have a message, and then we come back to the kind of foundational message, and then we have a story and a message, and then we come back to the foundations, and then we'll also have a bridge, a kind of an area with maybe the beat changes, where something changes. Maybe if in a speech section we might stop and we might say, what do you think? Give me your feedback. And we do that because it's beat, 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 change it up a bit, kind of beat, beat with a foundational beat, 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 foundational beat. Let's change it up a bit. So I know this kind of, hope this starts making sense. We kind of have a beat, beat, a story, the foundational beat, boom, boom. Then we have beat, beat, a story, the foundational message, boom, boom. And then we can have a la la la, la something different. And the reason for that in the rhythm of speaking or singing or sharing a story is we like the beat, we like the rhythm, it keeps us feeling safe, but then we got to have something a little bit different every now and then to keep us awake. Otherwise, we're going to go lullaby. Otherwise, we will, get too comfortable in that rhythm. Does that make sense? So recently, one of my students, she might be watching this, asked me a question which is very related to that. And this particular person asked me, said, oh, I'm thinking of doing, maybe a guided meditation at the start of my presentation. You know where you are. And again, I was thinking about that today before I came onto this. And what I was saying to her was this particular presentation was to get people in a very upbeat mood. But she mentioned, she was saying, I was thinking of doing a nice relaxing meditation first to get them all relaxed. And I said, but is that where you want to bring them? Do you want to bring them into a relaxed state? Or do you want to bring them in an upbeat, motivated state? Aha. Does that make sense? So the beat has to match where you want to bring them. Are you with me on that? So this is kind of to do with your energy, your tone, your volume, your pitch. All of these things are part of the rhythm. Now, as I said, rhythm is primal. And setting the scene at the start is a powerful way of presenting a rhythm. Okay, and the particular way that you talk, some of you may be noticing, some of you will know this, some of you will know my telltale ways. There is a rhythm, there is a beat, there is a rhythm and a beat. Now, you can study famous people and watch their rhythm. Some people do it naturally, and they don't even know how powerful they are. And some people have trained and studied this and really practiced this until they became incredible, effective communicators. Actors, most certainly, many of them have that. And they will have practiced that. Listen to someone's voice, listen to the rhythm. If you study someone like, for example, and I'm not an advocate of this guy, I've said it before, but if you look at Hitler, he had a rhythm in how he spoke. There's a build up, there's a build up, there's a rhythm, there's a rhythm. Get you in the rhythm, it's hypnotic. He had studied hypnosis and he was a very good hypnotist, unfortunately. You could look at Barack Obama. This is another gentleman that we study on the NLP practitioner. He had an amazing rhythm. Again, I'm pretty certain trained and taught. If you look and watch one of his most famous speeches, he uses what is used in song. He uses what is used in music. This four beat, ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. This 4-beat rhythm. He uses it in all his presentations, and you can use it with your syllables the exact same way. If you listen to the first 2 words of his most famous speech was, they said this day would never come. They said this day would never come. 8. They said our sights were set too high. 8. Bum bum, bum bum, bum bum, bum bum. You hear that? So, and we love this. It builds us up. to the big climax. La la, la la, la la, la la. And then you break it. Da 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 da. And then you do it again. And we get comfortable with that. And we're drawn into that. And we're hypnotized with that rhythm and that beat. Now, obviously, when you're using all of this in conjunction with everything that you've learned already in part one, you're using your body language to match this with congruency. You're using your nods of your head. You're using your clicks of your fingers. You're using all of these things in congruency to add power to your words. And it's extremely influential. You know, there's many powerful, I mean, we study this a lot again on the training. There's some wonderful, wonderful, beautiful characters that I've studied that have so much power in such a wonderfully gentle, subtle way. And it's all down to the rhythm of their speech. So I want you to start listening for that. Does that make sense? Tell me in the comments, does that make sense? Have you heard that before? Have you noticed that before? Is it something that you've ever observed or thought of? I'd love you to tell me. And I'm going to go on to the next slide here if I know how to move you guys out of the way here. Excuse me. So into the tone, rhythm. So that was actually rhythm. So put it in the comments and let me know, have you noticed that before with people? Have you noticed that before? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So the next thing I want to talk to you about here is rhyme. Rhyme. Now, is rhyme childish or is it effective? Yeah? We most certainly will watch it, Sinead. Absolutely. We'll be watching it. We'll be watching it on the NLP training, most certainly. I'll show you my favorite. My hero, his voice is incredible, incredible. And the way he uses it, Barack Obama is pretty good. But this particular character is phenomenal, and he's not who you would think is an NLPist or a hypnotist, but he's phenomenal and he uses it for good. You know, and it's incredible, the power of this hypnotic rhythm and language and way of using your voice and your tone. It's very powerful, very, very powerful. So would you say that rhyme is effective as a way to influence? Would you say that rhyme is an effective way to influence? Have you ever thought about using rhyme to influence, to persuade, to convince? Have you ever thought about that? You know, so it's called the Eaton Rosen, I think it must have been his name, phenomenon, and rhyme as a reason effect. That when, I'm sure it is, but never thought about it. Yes, when something rhymes, and this sounds so crazy, yet it's simply fact, we take it more seriously. You would think the opposite. We take it more as a given. When something has a natural rhythm or rhyme to it, and it doesn't have to necessarily rhyme 100%, but has that natural kind of rhyme to it, we take it more seriously. We take it as more true, as more truthful, as more accurate. We take it more seriously. Does that make sense? It's just a fact. It is used all the time in advertising. It's used all the time when we write, you know, viral hooks and use it to promote stuff. It's effective. And one of the reasons why it is effective is because when we were children, we liked it. We enjoyed that natural rhyme. And we got so comfortable with learning through rhyme. Rhyme is a really powerful way for us as children to learn, because it's easier to learn, isn't it, with a rhyme? That's why children have so many nursery rhymes. It's an easier way to learn. Now, if it's easier for us to learn as children with rhyme, then why wouldn't it be easier for us to learn as adults with rhyme? Make sense? Except we've kind of forgotten it sometimes, unless you're really big on advertising and you know what you're talking about. Does that make sense? So in your promotion, I often write poems. In your advertising, in your emails, it doesn't have to be literally in that context. In your headings, in your hooks, in your titles, in your conversation, in the names of your master classes, in these, is there a kind of a more poetic, rhyming way that you can phrase things so that it gives more kudos and strength to what you're saying? Yeah, I want you to think about that. So tone and volume, all of these parts make up your auditory way of communicating. And one of the things before we go into words that I want to share with you is, as I was saying earlier about, for example, my relationship with my partner, are you matching? Because when we're talking about rhyming, let's go back to that one there. When we're talking about rhyme and reason, a lot of this has to do with matching the other person. So rhyming also means matching. So for example, if you know that I'm very visual and I use a lot of sentences and words such as, I see what you're saying. Are you getting the picture? Is it becoming clearer? Is this coming into clear perspective for you? Is this in focus now? Are you focused on this? When I'm using a lot of seen words and you can hear that, then wouldn't it make sense that you match my communication style? That is subconscious. That is subconscious rapport. That is how we build subconscious rapport. So starting to notice that, and again, like a little bit what I was saying about body language, choose tomorrow to just notice. Is the person that you're speaking to, is the client, is your friend, is your partner, are they using a lot of words that are around sight? Are they using a lot of words that are around sound? Like, I hear what you're saying. Do you hear what I'm saying? Is this on your wavelength? Does this sound right? Do you like the sound of this? Or are they using a lot of words around what we call kinesthetic, around feeling, around touch? Are they using a lot of words like saying things like, are you getting this? Are you starting to come to grasps with this? Is this are you starting to feel this? If they are, when you speak back in that same language, you have built a really strong subconscious bond. Now, again, they will know, a little bit like what I was saying earlier about a person maybe not feeling comfortable with you and feeling, oh, there's something off about this person. When you do match, they're going to feel there's just something about this person. We just click. There's just something, we just clicked. We automatically clicked. And that is why you are probably clicking with some people, because they're speaking your language. They're simply speaking your language. So when you say, do you see what I mean? They're going back and going, yeah, it's totally clear now. Or when you say, are you getting this? They're coming back and saying, oh my God, this feels so good. Or when you say, do you like the sound of this? They're saying, oh my God, I can really hear what you're saying to me. So you're speaking the same language. So when that happens, you will feel an automatic connection. And you can do that, by the way, in all aspects of your life, of course, in your personal life, obviously, and also your business life. Listening. Now, if you're presenting, or if you're speaking to the masses, or if you're writing stuff to go out to many people, then what's really important to do is to cover all bases. Bases, is that a word? Is to cover all of the bases, Okay. You want to make sure that you're using all the three types of communication so that people will feel you, not just using your favorite. So not just saying so people will feel you, also people will get you. That's kinesthetic as well. Also people will hear what you're saying. Also people will really see the big picture. Does that make sense? So you want to incorporate all of that in your emails, in your social media, in your advertising, in your presentations, in your Facebook lives, in your webinars, in your, stage, performances. You want to incorporate it in all aspects of your business or your personal life if you are speaking to more than one person. When you are speaking to one person, then you can find out by listening to them what is their favorite style, and then speak back to them in their favorite style, and then you will have a really powerful subconscious match. Does that make sense? Yeah? Tell me that makes sense. Put it in the comments and let me know. Does that make sense? Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on today. Tomorrow we are going to be going much, much deeper into words in the context of, even though this is only 7% of our communication, in the context of all the different ways that we can use language. There's a lot of different ways. And I'm going to be touching on some of the most powerful ways for you to influence. I want to start with this today. The first words and the most important words that you could ever know and use correctly, or maybe I should say effectively. And thank you. Only here 2 minutes. Fantastic. Makes great sense. Awesome. Thank you, Yvonne. So what do you think are the two most powerful, influential words on the planet? Put it in the comments in the chat and tell me what you think the two most powerful words on the planet are. And when you've mastered these words, you're going to, even again, I could spend a year. I could spend a whole year just talking about these two words and how you could use these words. So, and I'm giving you guys here, we could say a super fast, lesson, insight into what you can start honing and how you can start using these words to influence yourself and others around you. So we have a few good guesses, some great words that I will be talking about tomorrow. I'm not going to share the ones that people have shared that are not the one I'm looking for right now, because they're all very good guesses and we will be covering all of them tomorrow. I love that. I love that. I love that. We have one correct. So Jennifer Spain is in the house. She is an NLP practitioner of mine. So Jennifer Spain got it correct. The two most powerful words on the planet are I am. I am. Now, you've probably heard that before. Some of you may have heard the quote. I think it goes something like, I am are the two most powerful words on the planet because what comes next shapes us. Have you heard that said? Have you heard that said? And why is that a quote that is bandied around? Why is that a quote that we use so often? I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen now, I think, because great, get to see you beautiful people a bit more here. So why is that a powerful, why are they the two most powerful words? Why? Why would you say they are the two most powerful words that you could ever use? Put in the chat and let me know. We know that it says, the quote says, what comes next shapes us, right? Why? Why do we know that? Why do we think what comes next shapes us? Have you spent time thinking about that? Have you actually spent time thinking about that? Because I know this sounds a bit strange, but I am very strange. But I think I've shared with you that when I hit my rock bottom, some of you heard a little bit of my story yesterday, about 15 years ago, I had been very practical all my life. You know, I was the doer, yeah. I was the grafter. I was the one that the survivor, the one that could fix anybody and, you know, and would figure a way out. And I was all in practical, what we call masculine energy of fix it, do it, get it done, which is also, by the way, mothering energy. I talk a lot about that as well. And I was the master of that, getting things done. But I had no self-worth. Absolutely no self-worth whatsoever. And sometimes people kind of go, how can that be possible? Because I had confidence. I had confidence at doing the things that I could do and knowing how to survive and knowing how to get by and knowing how to, you know, figure out how to make an income. And, you know, I had 3 restaurants and a gift shop. I had about 120 staff. And yet I had no self-worth, none whatsoever. I was confident at what I knew how to do because confidence comes from doing. Confidence comes from doing. Sit with that. The only way you get confident at doing something is by doing it. The only way. So when you're sitting there at home and saying, when I get the confidence to show up on camera, then I'll do it. It's never going to happen. Or when I get the confidence to sell my product, then I'll do it. It's never going to happen. When I get the confidence to go out and meet the love of my life, then I'll do it. When I get the confidence to put myself on Match.com, then I'll do it. When I get the confidence to open my business, then I'll do it. It's never going to happen that way. That's the bad news. Because confidence comes from doing. That's how you get confident. It's a verb. It's something that happens from doing. Has that registered? There's a big difference. Self-worth is completely different. So I had confidence. I was like, look, I'll fix it. I'll do it. I'll sort it. I can do it. I can do this. I can do that. I can do everything. No problem. I can do everything. Anything you want, I can do it. I can do it. Because confidence comes from doing. I was a doer. And yet I felt, and I've said this sentence before because this is just literally what comes to me, and you can read into my subconscious, but that's how I felt. I literally felt like the scum on the bottom of a shoe. That's the worth. That was my worth. I felt like I had no worth. I had no value. I was worthless. I had nobody would ever love me. I was unimportant. Nobody would ever put me first, most of all myself, and I had no worth. And the reason why I'm resharing this with you about, you know, because when 15 years ago, when I hit rock bottom, remember I had practicality. So when I went into the self-development world and understanding about subconscious communication. And this is really important. This is why I am A, so passionate about what I talk about, and B, so effective. So effective because I know the power of doing. I was very practical. So when I started to learn stuff, and I touched on this yesterday, I said, keep asking yourself, how can I make this work for me? How can I make this work for me? How can I put this to use today? Because when I started learning this stuff, and I heard a sentence, and I started learning about, our words have power, and what we say to ourselves is powerful. And I really said, okay, so I really kept on saying to myself, okay, so what can I learn from that? How am I going to put that to use? Okay, my words of power. So I've got to change my words. I've got to. Let me put it into action. I can't just keep thinking about it because I'm not a thinker, I'm a doer. So how do I put it into action? So I've got to start actually changing the words. I've got to be proactive and change the words. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to do it until the other part comes. And it was literally like gold. I mean, I say this and I know these are big claims, but I totally 100% stand by this. I've said it before, I've said it on every course I've done over the last 10 years, particularly over the last, we could say 5 or 6 years, online. And every single time somebody has messaged me back and said, you're right, that in itself, that single thing changed my life. Right? Because what I'm going to say to you is take one of these learnings, put one thing to use effectively. Take one thing and do it and master it, and you will change the whole trajectory of your life. 100% guaranteed, no questions. It's impossible not to. Put it into action. Just one thing. So when I discovered, it's not a discovery, when I learned, when I heard, because most people hear things, we've all heard stuff. We all hear this stuff, but do we use it? And I heard that I am are the two most powerful words in the world, and what comes next shapes us. That stuck in my head. And I went, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? And then I started Googling and I started looking it up because that's how I work. Got to figure this out. And I realized this is completely linked with what? Psychology and what? Identity bias. Identity bias. Our strongest bias. In other words, how we see ourselves, how we view ourselves. Correct? Our self-worth. Our self-worth. So remember, I had no self-worth. So I started to recognize that the words that I had been using when it came to I am were not good words. I'm stupid. I'm no good. I'm worthless. I'm a piece of SHIT. I'm this, that, or the other. I am this. I'm no good at that. I'm terrible at names. I'm no good at numbers. I'm not that type of person. And all of these sentences. And that's what I was saying the whole time. I was identifying as a particular type of person, and I was 100% hypnotizing myself and reinforcing constantly identity bias with confirmation bias. And the two go hand in hand. The two go hand in hand. We want to prove ourselves right. And that was also something phenomenal that changed in me. When I realized that I didn't want to be right anymore. And I coined my little term Some of you may have heard my little quote, it's oh so right to be wrong. When I realized that every time that I was wrong, my world got better, that's when things started to change. I realized that if I was constantly looking to prove myself right about negative stuff, then my world wasn't going to change. So I had to start looking for the evidence to prove myself wrong about the negative stuff. Does that make sense? So I am is extremely powerful depending on the context as well that you use it. Now, in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is neuro, your brain, linguistics, your language, programming, how we program ourselves, right? I am is what we call an associated sentence, or what comes after it. It's an associated sentence. Does that make sense? So when we say I am, we are identifying as that. So we are associated in that role. Does that make sense? Now, if that's a good thing that comes after it, then by all means, utilize it. Use I am, because it is the most hypnotic sentence that you can ever use. I am terrible at numbers. Is that a good one? I am a really smart person. That's a good one. It's associated. Does that make sense? So I am is an associated sentence. So if I was you, because this is what I started to train myself to do, is I only used I am when I wanted to feel more of it. Because it's associated, I'm identifying as it, and I'm going to want to continue to prove myself right. So how often, I want you to think about it, how often are you saying sentences like, oh, I'm not good enough at that, or I'm not the type of person who could do that, or I'm not cut out for this, or I'm just always going to be this way, or I'm not smart enough, not clever enough, not confident enough, not outgoing enough, la 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 la. How often are you saying those sentences that are hypnotizing you, and you're confirming and looking for evidence? Because the moment you say it, you're going to start looking for evidence to prove yourself right. Especially us Irish. I told you so. Favorite 4 words. Yeah. Okay. It's our favorite words. I told you so. I knew it. I told you so. Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you he was going to behave like this? Didn't I tell you she was going to do that? Didn't I tell you this would happen to me? Didn't I tell you it was going to rain today? Don't we love to say I told you so? So we love to prove ourselves right. So we've got to use it in a more effective way. So I want you to remember that I am is associated. And when we are associated in hypnotic terms, in our subconscious mind, we are immersed, and we are in it. And unless it's a good thing, we don't want to be there. Does that make sense? If it's a good feeling, great. If it's not a good feeling, we do not want to be associated. We want to be the opposite, disassociated. So I am is a sentence that we want to use smartly from this moment on. And I want to ask you, what are the words, the 2 words that we would use that relate to I am when we're speaking to somebody else then? Put it in the chat. What are the words that we that are related to somebody else, that are related to I am? You are. Exactly. You are. So I want you to think about that. I get people, husbands, wives, friends coming to me all the time. And they say, oh, and I told him that he was this, or she said I was that. And I'm wondering, in your relationships, how often are you saying to someone that you care about, someone that you love, you are such and such. You're selfish. You're lazy. You're inconsiderate. You're rude. How often are you saying that to people that you're in relationships with? Because if you are saying that, you are hypnotizing them to be that even more. That's all you are doing. Because remember, I said you're an amazing hypnotist. So if you're with somebody and somebody is rude to you and you say, God, you're terribly rude, that's only going to make them ruder. Or your partner offends you and you're saying, God, you're so inconsiderate. That's only going to make them more inconsiderate. Or you seem you're really lazy. It's going to make them lazier. Or you tell your children, and you say, you're bold. You're so bold. That's only going to make them bolder. Does that make sense? It's the same thing as saying I am. You are influencing them. Now, if it's a good thing, again, by all means, use it. Right? So if you want to influence somebody, unless you want to harm somebody, and I presume you don't want to make somebody feel more of whatever all those nasty things are, even for your own relationships, but if it's a good thing, then by all means use you are. So you are smart. Yeah, you're so kind. You are beautiful. Wow, you're amazing. Yes, you're really good at this. Yes, you're made for this. Yes, you're a natural at this. Use it. Because it's got the same influence. It's powerful. But I want you to really be honest and think about how often are you using that in a detrimental way? Because every day I have people coming to me and they say, oh, my husband is so selfish. And I said, well, what did you say to him? I said, what I told him he was. I told him he's got to stop because he's just so inconsiderate. He's so selfish. He's so lazy. I said, how's that working for you? And they say, it's not. Of course it's not, because all you do is keep hypnotizing him to be that. Because you keep saying you are lazy. You are selfish. You are inconsiderate. No hypnotist is going to sit down in front of somebody and use their words like that. Doesn't make sense. So why would you? Because you've got superpowers. Does that make sense? So I am and you are sentences that are extremely hypnotic, unbelievably powerful, because they are associated and they are linked with your or somebody else's identity. And when we identify as a particular type of person, we want to, unfortunately, conform to that identity. Well, unfortunately, if it's bad, unfortunately, if it's good, great. So, this was studied through many various studies and different tests that they did to discover this. It is a well-known scientific, psychologically researched phenomenon, and identity bias is the most powerful bias that you can utilize for your own benefit. It was the one that changed my life and helped me grow my self-worth, and is the one that I'm extremely conscious of how I utilize with my loved ones, with my partner, with people I care about, and with my clients. So when they did these studies, for example, they did a particular study where they went around this neighborhood, and it was to do with environmental, awareness. And they went to a typical suburban estate and they went around all the houses And they did it a couple of different ways. The first time they said, hey, they knocked on the door and they say, hey, would you be interested in putting this poster in the window to anti-littering or something like that? And most people, guess what they said? Most people said, no, thanks. Sorry, I don't really want to put that in the window. Then they did it again. They went back to another estate, same demographic, but this time they changed it. They first called to the door and they said, hey, we're doing a bit of a research on environmental awareness and, what do you think about littering? And most people said, oh, I don't agree with it. It's terrible. Would never litter. I'm totally against it. And, we've got to save our planet and la, 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 and all of this. And they said, okay, thanks, just putting your name down here on the list. And then they went back to those houses a week later and they said, hey, I see last week, you said you're all, you're concerned about the environment and littering, etc. And the people be, yes, of course we are. And they said, okay, would you put the poster in the window? Would you put a poster in the window for anti-littering? Guess what happened? Most people said, okay. Now, they did a third test to check because, for the skeptics, oh, was it just because they felt a little bit, coerced, a little bit embarrassed into putting the poster in the window? But yes, because they had said that they were that type of person. So yes, they felt compelled to put the poster in the window after saying it. So they went back a third time to another demographic. They did the same test again, and it was to do with energy saving. They knocked on the door. They said, are you into energy, saving energy, conserving energy? And everyone said yes. And then they came back a week later. And guess what they did this time? They just checked their energy bills, or a month later or whatever it was. They checked their bills. And guess what? Everyone's bills had reduced because everybody was now more aware of conserving energy because they'd spoken out loud and they had said that they were the type of person that was concerned with that particular subject. This was something that mattered to them. I have used this identity bias. I cannot tell you in how many ways I have used that for myself, for sales, for clients. I've used this in the restaurant business. I've trained all my staff. I've also worked with many restaurants in Dublin, for example, and trained their staff in how to use identity bias to sell more. For example, I managed a very well-known vegetarian restaurant for many years after I closed my restaurants. And it was a vegetarian restaurant. So the people that would come there were either interested in health or animal welfare or vegetarian, one of the two, health, environment, or animal welfare, right? So the staff were trained by me to ask the customers, to say to the customer, oh, so why do you like coming to Cornucopia, right? Why do you like coming here? So that the people would respond, say, well, well, I love the food, but why? Well, what is it about it? Well, some people just come because they like the food, great food. But it was also more than that. It was also because, well, because I'm a vegetarian, because I'm interested in health, or because I'm interested in saving the planet. And they would speak about what they were passionate about. Now, when we get somebody to talk out loud and vocalize who they identify as, that is powerful. They want to keep conforming to that identity. So guess what? They'll keep coming back to the restaurant. So you can do the same with your clients, with potential sales, with whatever it might be, with your relationship. When you get somebody, just checking my partner has come home. When you get somebody to identify as a type of person, I've done this so many times to improve my relationships. You're the type of guy that always does this, aren't you? Yes, I am. I'm the type of man that loves really good with his hands, loves to fix things. Guess what? He fixes everything. The more you get them to speak about something, they want to prove themselves right and confirm that identity. It's powerful. And of course, it also works the opposite way. Does that make sense? So I am and you are words that I really, really want you to observe, to notice, to become aware of. And how we link that to confirmation bias is powerful. Now, the last thing I kind of want to end with this is today is another bias. We've spoken about identity bias, I am, you are. We've spoken about confirmation bias, wanting to prove ourselves right. And the third one is loss bias. It's a wonderful psychological bias that can be used to our advantage. When we tend to say we are something, it creates a desire to move towards it, right? And when we lose something, it creates a desire to get something back. So you might have heard people saying, fake it until you make it, or be it first, or you've got to be the example. You've got to step into it first. I often say you've got to be in it first. You've got to be the person first. When we talk about manifestation, visualization, it's all about you being it first. Correct? Yeah. When you talk about selling, if you're not the type of person that is, for example, willing to invest, you're not going to attract people that are willing to invest in you. You've got to be the person first. Now, a lot of people don't believe in manifestation. A lot of people think visualization and this sort of stuff is woo-woo. I want to give you a very simple psychological explanation of how manifestation can work in a psychological sense, in a motivational sense. So when you visualize, which is, i.e., simply imagining you are at the goal, have reached the goal, or doing the thing, have embodied the life, the thing that you want, right? Whatever it is, whatever goal you've set out to achieve. Let's say you want to be in 5 years' time living in your dream home, or living in Spain, or with the person of your dreams, or having a 6-figure, 7-figure business, whatever that might be. Now, when you go there in your mind's eye and you actually go to it, go into it, yeah? Your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real or imagined. You've probably heard that said before. It literally does not know. And if you're doubtful of that, and if you're wondering, is that true? Just think about when you woke up after you dreamt about Brad Pitt, or in my case, Viggo Mortensen, or whoever might float your boat. Okay. How did you feel when you woke up after a dream? Right? How come you first of all felt emotion when you had a nice dream, or felt fear when you had a scary dream, or felt sadness when you had a sad dream? How come you had emotion? Because when you were asleep, your conscious mind was asleep. That's the only part of you that sleeps. Your subconscious never sleeps, so you'd be dead. So when you were asleep, your conscious mind, which is the filter, which is the one that knows the difference between what's real and imagined, had gone bye-bye. And your subconscious mind didn't know that this was not real, so hence you felt emotion. That is why when you come back into awakeness, into consciousness, you go, oh, thank God that was just a dream. Or, oh no, that was just a dream, I want to go back there. Because the conscious mind tells the difference, but the subconscious mind doesn't. Now, what has that got to do with loss bias? Everything. Because if you don't believe in manifestation as energy, fine. But believe in it as psychology. Because very, very simply, when you imagine something and you've tricked your subconscious mind into believing that it has happened, guess what kicks in now? Loss bias. Loss bias. because loss bias is simply when we believe something, we believe we had something and we lose it, guess what? We want it back much more than if we never had it in the first place. Correct? You know, we at the end of a relationship, we feel a stronger pull towards it because we had it. We lose something that's of value to us, we want it back more than if we never had it. Does that make sense? So it creates loss bias. So we can use loss bias to our advantage for the things that we want, and also in other people. When we get them to go there, or ourselves, to visualize, to be in it, to experience it, feel it, see it, experience it, then we've tricked our subconscious mind or somebody else's into believing that they have it. And guess what that creates? Motivation, determination, drive, want, desire, because we want it back much more. That's why we give somebody a car for a drive, you know, for the weekend, because they've got it now. It creates loss bias. They don't want to give it back. That's why we give somebody, but it can be also done simply through imagination. Does that make sense? So that is that is what I wanted to end on today. Tomorrow we are going to go even deeper into these words. I want to talk a little bit about how we can do the opposite of I am and you are, and disassociate, and show you when and how it's beneficial and what words to use to disassociate. Because I am is identity. Tomorrow we're going to go into other type of words which disassociate from identity and when that would be relevant. We're also going to go into subliminal commands and how to incorporate deeply, deeply, deeply suggestive influence through various ways that we can do that. And we have a lot more incredible gold to come. So put it in the chat and let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from today? And also, I'm going to put it in the chat again. If you haven't, I know some of you have, if you haven't booked your Calendly call, your call with me yet, please do so. Because that's not, I don't know why that's not going, meeting group chat. You'll get it in the email as well. For some reason that's not copying, but you think you have it further up. I will also be sending out an email after this. So if you haven't booked your call with me, do so, because I'm going to show you exactly where those subconscious blocks are and what to do about them. Does that sound like that could be useful and extremely beneficial for your life? Yeah. What would it feel like to have that block gone? What do you think it would feel like? Just imagine what that feel like. What would it feel like to have a clearer path ahead, to have more sense of freedom, to feel that you can go after your dreams, to go and do what it is that you want to do? What would it feel like to kind of just be able to have that weight off your shoulders and just be able to go, thanks, Danielle. That's good. Yeah. So I will show you that in 5 minutes. I will show you where your block is, and we all have one. We all have probably some of them, many of them, in different places. I will show you literally where it is and what you can do to change that. And by the way, some of you are already in, so you guys are the lucky ones. There's big, 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 big stuff coming in the Academy soon. I'm going to be announcing it literally probably day after tomorrow, what's happening, big, big changes. So those of you who are in my academy, the Black Belt Mastermind Academy, are very, very lucky. Those of you that are not in yet will want to get in this month. So get on a Calendly call, because you guys are going to be the lucky ones, because those people that are coming in later in April, well, they're still going to be lucky, but they're not going to be quite as lucky as you guys are. So Loss bias. What was the most useful thing that you learned today? Identity bias. Yes, I am. Loss bias. Yeah, it makes total sense. It does, doesn't it? How to use the different languages and all that we do. Yes, loss bias makes so much sense. The session went so quickly. Thanks, Danielle. Okay, can't wait. Okay, how we overcome loss bias. Okay, awesome. I'm going to stop the recording for you guys watching, and I'll stay on to answer any questions to you guys on Zoom. To those of you watching the replay, I will see you same time, same place tomorrow for day 3. It's going to be gold. So make sure you are here with us live if you can, so you can get your questions answered, and go book your calendar call. And I will see you on the inside very, very soon.